I just finished up the Japanese lesson, which 16 years living in this wonderful country, and I still need to speak the language a whole lot better. But anyway, take a break from that and have a chance to talk in English for a while. And fun enough, talking about Japan, smooth intro there. This will go into the Robbo era, little video on Robbo, mainly Robbo period, because after we joined, I think he flew over to Toronto, or the next gigs were in Toronto. Eddie's gone. And it's only recently that I found out, I've heard the story that Eddie, and he tells it himself, there's a video on YouTube. I think it's called Eddie's Last Stand. It's a Palladium in New York. I think it was in New York, and he was put in a separate dressing room, and none of the others would look at him during the performance, and had to do the sound check separately and stuff. And he'd been in a hotel, and there was a roadie order to keep him in the room, and Eddie tried to leave, and the roadie tried to stop him, and Eddie knocked him out. all this sort of thing. But apparently, so they finished the performance. Eddie's put down. He was like some like a boiler room or some janitor's room at the New York Palladium. This little with a bottle of vodka, a little pile of speed, and as he said later, 2 cracking birds. But he went up to the main dressing room, which must have been big, because he said there was like a couple hundred people in there. It's full of people talking and smoke and la da da. And he saw the other 2, Filthy and Lemmy, and they came over, and Eddie was like, "Oh, let's, I know we've had a rough patch and all this plasmatic stuff, or recording with Wendell Williams, but let's put it behind us and carry on." And the other 2 just said to him, "No, man, fuck you, you gone." It's only recently I've really heard that story. And Lemmy said, if we talked him back in, he's always like, we just couldn't be bothered to talk him back in. And Lemmy said if we had it done, we'd be having this exact same conversation, because he would have quit again a week later. It was not like some major crunch moment. It was happening all the time. It was just that time they said, no, that's it. But who knows? Anyway, but there's Robbo. So met the call, Robbo, and then first of all, Robbo was like, "I told him to fuck off. I didn't want the gig." He said he never liked Motörhead. I've seen it in interviews. I said, "What do you like about Motörhead?" He was like, "Nothing." And this is when he was in Motörhead. But so he hacks off all his hair, dyes it red, doesn't yet dress in ballet like shoes and tiny shorts and stuff, but flies over to Toronto. You listen to a tape on the plane. They had 16 hours of rehearsals, and they played Harpo's in somewhere. These videos of them playing it, that venue. But Lemmy said he was shocked by Robbo's appearance, but it's really easy to ignore. If a start, this is quoting his own book, he said, because he played like a demon. I mean, that was exactly the words he used. He was a demon. He was bang on. And with him, they went, for the first time, Motörhead went to Japan. Apparently Robbo said, because he'd been there before Thin Lizzy. He was like, don't expect them to cheer like, Western crowds do. He says, they just sit there and clap their wee hands. That's his words. And then we said he was blown away, because they're mad for Motörhead in Japan. And I think Japan and Germany were 2 of Motörhead's strongest markets right to the end. I think both countries, Japan and Germany, are very, if they like something, it's not fickle. They just stick to it. I know that in Japan. I've seen it with like the way the thing with the Beatles or rockabilly or something, some sort of trend or style of music. They're absolutely, bang on it. It's not a fashion that ebbs. But they played this. There's a recording on YouTube of them playing at Yupin Chocking Hall, and it actually scotches the thing that Robbo, right from the start, refused to play their best known songs, because other than the Ace of Spades, he played his Iron Fist, Overkill Bomber, and they finished with Motörhead. I'm no Ace of Spades, but other than that, he did start, at least at the start, he played their classics, the Motörhead classics. And Lemmy said, he said he loved Japan right from the start, and definitely. But listen to the recording, Robbo is just all over the place. This is a real road. I don't know if you can hear it turn up a bit. It's this. He couldn't do it. And there's loads of things they just play. Obviously, Motörhead, it's simple music, and Robbo just couldn't get at that. He's always trying to do little lead runs and stuff, and he runs out of time. He doesn't make it in time and stuff. He's a fantastic, wonderful, brilliant guitarist and stuff. As Phil Lynott and Lemmy both said, he came with multiple issues. But for Motörhead, that style of music, because everyone said, far for superior player to Eddie and stuff. Well, yeah, but he's sloppy as hell on these recordings. And that echoed from anyone who saw him live, many people who saw him live. At times I've seen Robbo, the people just talking this out, like Robbo was just a mess. The manager, Doug Smith, who said he had to ride a Robbo in the bus, and he said he could do a bottle of Jack Daniels in like pretty much one gulp. And he said he'd sit there sucking his thumb. Yeah, I don't want Robbo bashing, but I really don't think he did them any favours live, and I'll come to a bit more of that later on. About how it took Motörhead from, with Eddie just doing 3 nights sold out at Hammersmith or whatever, or, big Apollos and things. I mean, it's certainly in England and Europe. In America, they were still trying to crack it, and Robbo, I mean, they said it only really cracked America when Lemmy was ill right at the end. I think that one of the last albums did really well in America. Which was odd, there's a video of them in 2000 playing some, but it's just not a big thing. Some in America. Although it's on YouTube, and it's the year 2000, and suddenly James Hetfield's on stage, and they do overkill. He just appears. He's gone there to meet him. He's nearby and went there for a drink, and they drag him on stage. So, I mean, obviously their cred. I mean, it goes without saying their cred was sky high, but they just didn't play massive venues in America. But anyway, about that 1980 or 1982, Robbo, where they were doing sold out shows for 3-4 nights in the same venue. So at least at the start, as regards the set list, they were playing Motörhead classics. Robbo said himself he just didn't get it. I've seen him being interviewed. I read interviews with him. He said playing Bomber and stuff. He didn't understand it for him. It'd be like, honestly, like giving an artist a kid's colouring in book, but technically for him. Eddie was Chuck Berry on speed. It was completely two different, chalk and cheese. For someone like Robbo, he'd be like, I'm just standing here playing A like this. What the fuck am I doing? I'll quickly go up here and stomp on an effects pedal, and it just screwed the whole thing up, because it's not some intricate, thought out solo or dual lead guitar riff from Thin Lizzy. It was, I say, chalk and cheese. But he soon fixed that off the album. So Lemmy said in his book, Robbo, he didn't want to be associated with Eddie, so he started to knock out all the tunes they were known for. And apparently Filthy was fully in agreement. Filthy wanted that as well. He thought they were going to a higher musical plane with Robbo, so just get rid of the old stuff, which to me is just, well, who cares what I think, but as I'm doing this video, I suppose I have to say it's just unfathomable that Lemmy would have even allowed that. It's like, yeah, but that's what made Motörhead famous, is the Ace of Spades. You may grow to hate that track, and maybe you're playing it every night, but every band's got that. Every Rolling Stones got, you've got to play Satisfaction, or whoever it is, playing their best known tracks. But all the others as well, Overkill and stuff. Yeah, but it's bizarre. It's like what your band is known for. You can't just sort of, oh, we're not going to play that anymore. We'll just pretty much just play the whole new album we've made of Robbo through, because we've got no other material apart from some covers of like Hoochie Coochie Man and stuff we shouldn't play. And I think Robbo would still play the lesser known stuff, like he played some tracks off Iron Fist, Heart of Stone. I think he played Shooting the Back. But again, there'd be all these effects all over it and guitar synthesizers and stuff, which just did not work. But he would continue to play some of the lesser known stuff throughout the career, just to pad it out. But by then, and this is Mick, oh God, I can't remember his surname. Lemmy, the Ultimate Biography. One thing that was with going on with Brian Robertson was the audience numbers were going down and down and down. Mick Wall, Lemmy, the Definitive Biography. That's one thing that's not often acknowledged with Robbo, because it's thought, because he was this huge, very well known guitarist already, that it was carried on, and it didn't. It went down really sharp. Word was getting around the performances were shambolic. They were not playing Motörhead classics. I mean, I really like the album Another Perfect Day. But it's like, to me, it all feels like a side project. You could have done even with Lemmy's vocals and stuff. But to be fair, and again, this comes from the definitive biography. Robbo talks about recording. He put a whole load of work into that. When Phil would apparently sort of just come and expect everything to be set up, and he just do his drum tracks and he bugger off. Lemmy was never there. We come and listen, give me something to listen to, sketch out some lyrics, which were fantastic. But Robbo said he was doing a lot of the work. He came, as he called it, I come from this Phil Lynott school of production where you learn the desk. He'd mic up the drums. To get a particular sound. He was interested in all that, the real sort of nitty gritty, as it were. Whereas Lemmy and that, they just did not give up. It's like, oh, no, I want to be down. I'll go in the pub and play a fruit machine and ring the pub. Back in those days, no mobile phones. Give me a ring and everything's set up. I'll just come and do my bass thing. And make sure there's a bottle of vodka waiting. Whereas there's something else I want to say there. Anyway, but whereas Robbo was closely involved with the engineer. It's really annoying. There's something I was definitely going to say some great thought, but anyway. So it's a really good album, I think. I mean, Dancing on Your Grave was one of my favourite Motörhead songs. I think it's just fantastic, and Robbo's solos are spine tingling. Really, really good. And you get a sense of what Robbo was up against with the other two. They're not being fully engaged in production processes, so to speak. It was just Motörhead being just one big party. And before, when they were recording Iron Fist, I want to talk about Robbo in this video, but when Fast Eddie was producing it, he said tearing his hair out. Lemmy would screw up a bass run, and Fast Eddie would be like, "Mate, we've got to fix this." And then was like, "Oh, you just take my bass and do it. I've got to meet some bird down at this club." Literally like that. And Fast Eddie said he's there late at night, trying to punch in. Back in the days before digital and everything, he's literally cutting tape with scissors and sticking it together and all this sort of thing. Just playing one note on his bass, which Lemmy has fudged. He's having to do all that. So, anyway, but with Robbo, they were not any more into it, Filthy and Lemmy. So Robbo's doing all this work, which I think should be acknowledged. When there's enough to say about Robbo, how it didn't really work with him, and a lot of it was, I don't think it was his fault. I said before, to use this expression, I don't want to overdo it, but chalk and cheese, he just wasn't right for that outfit. But in the album they made, as I say, a side project, like two different groups coming together, that did work. Live, I think it suffered a lot because of Robbo's tendency to try and do sort of three things at once on the guitar and use all these effects and stuff, and stick in fourths like Shoot in the Back. I've talked about that before. They're all falls, which just stuff like that. But I say he just couldn't hold it down. Sometimes just play, which technically a lot of motor stuff is not technically demanding. It'd be three chords because that's what it is. That's the thing. It's like fish and chips is not an intricate meal, but it's damn satisfying. So they're out on the road, they're playing this, and as I said, I've known a few people who saw them, older than me, and they've all uniformly said Phil Campbell was actually in a band that supported them right at the end. I mean, shortly before he applied and was accepted to join Motörhead. He was in a band, Persian Risk. I think they supported Motörhead. It was Persian Risk. And he said all he can remember was it was just all over the place. And then, he said not trying to Phil Campbell, rest in peace, not trying to put shit on Robbo. What was that? It was my attempt at a Welsh accent. He said not trying to put, SHIT on Robbo, but it was just shambolic, and he was pissed and falling over the place and la 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 la. So there's this story at the end that Robbo got really sick from partying and had to be flown home and stuff, and had a mental or near nervous breakdown, but that was entirely deliberate because Motörhead were going to tank. They weren't selling tickets. They weren't even, I don't know, but the way I've read about it is that you can make a lot of money off merchandise, but even that wasn't selling. So people aren't buying t-shirts at the gigs and stuff. And Doug Smith, the manager's like, Motörhead about to go bankrupt. We've got this massive debt and we're trying to keep them on tour and it's not working. And I think the insurance, if one of them went ill, the insurance would pay up and you could save it that way. So Robbo was basically selected to go ill and given everything under the sun to eat, to drink, smoke, take, whatever. And so he was, the next day he was severely ill and he had to be flown home. He was put to bed and they got the insurance that way and they could cancel the tour without incurring all these cancellation charges. He was in Richmond. I know Richmond well. It's close to where I grew up. Southwest London. Lemmy and Phil went to visit him and they sat on his bed. Robbo's in bed. Sick as a pig because they filled him with everything. I think he was weighed like 7 stone by then. And yeah, but it was all very amicable. I said, it's just not working, is it, mate? Robbo was like, oh, no, not really. I said, well, I hope you don't take it amiss if we look for someone else, as they said at the time, but there'd be 2 more people, and Filthy was not going to stick around for long. Or was that weird thing, even at the time, backstage, Filthy and Brian or Robbo were having these secret talks about how they could form a band away from Lemmy. I've got really itchy back. So that was going on as well, but at the time, Laura had a fantastic hangover, it's fair to say. So that was kind of it. I think about 18 months, just extremely shambolic all over the place. But if one thing came out of it, was a very good album. But as an album, to me, has never really seemed fully Motorheadish. It's like I've said already, but it's a sort of side project, but really good for that. And Dance on the Grave. The only thing is, when they did the tracks later on, Lemmy wouldn't touch him for ages, and he slagged the album off when it came out. When it came out, he called it Robbo's side project and stuff. But then he said he grew to like it, and they played the tracks in later years, especially with the final Phil Campbell and Mickey D lineup. But to me, they never worked. It's one of those things. Mickey D, I said it before, brilliant as he is, and everything. To me, he overplayed some tracks. He just bludgeoned them, and those tracks, like Dancing in the Grave, I don't know. There was a certain feel. Filthy had a certain swing feel. It just took the edge off the. Sounds just a bit, so just a bit sort of. Even though it's Motörhead, and I never thought those tracks really worked live. They sort of just careered their way through it, and it was just another one gone. But anyway, that's just my opinion. I'm about to say, yeah, I think that was a Robbo period to me. Robbo into Japan, and on it there, I might look at the 2 guitarist lineup in more depth for my next vid. Anyway, that's it for now. Cheers.